Well, welcome back to Joy in the Journey. My name is Donna. My dad always used to call me Donna Marie, but most people just call me Donna. My channel is about my life that started with the idea to more or less video or vlog my life as a disabled person born with spina bifida and how my faith has played a factor in my life. So if you're new here, I welcome you. And for those of you who are returnees, I guess is the word, welcome. So I know that I have been kind of offline for like the last 2 weeks. It's been really busy. We're getting ready for my mom to come and visit, which I can't wait. Quite frankly, we've got so much that we want to go through. She's telling me that she's going to be bringing some pictures of the old days, which is good because then I'll be able to share them with all of you. Lots of memories. And so the last time that I came on camera was, I think, 2 weeks ago. I think I said that right. And but in that time, but like I said, we've been very busy, and we also had a loss. We lost our beloved pet, Phoebe. I'll try to post a picture on my channel of her and let y'all see her. She was a beautiful little girl. She was 12 years old, and she had developed back in December a limp in her, sometimes it was on the right and sometimes it was on the left. So we really don't know if it was the right leg that bothered her or the left, because it would alternate. That's my door behind behind me that I just noticed. Um, anyway, it got to the point where she was not getting up from her cat bed at all. We were having to hand feed her. She looked just completely miserable. She slept most of the time, which cats typically do sleep a lot. They sleep, at least from what I've read, a good 18 hours every day, which that's not unusual for them, but she was like marathon sleeping. It was around the clock just about. She'd get up once in a while, meow for me or for Keith, or whoever was in her view. She'd meow, and we'd give her some more of the foods. And at this point, she was only eating the treats. And if if that's what she wanted, that's what we gave her. But we decided that it was time for us to give her wings and let her fly free. So, but we're pretty lost without her, because we had lost our other cat in December, which Phoebe had gotten sick right around that same time, but then seemed to have been doing well. And April 28th was when we decided that it was time for her to be set free. So, that being said, I mentioned in my last video that I would be talking about my school years, because that is another big block of my life that really had an effect on me in later years leading up to now, um, and in my formation. The one thing that I am so grateful for is that I have had a faith that has kept me very strong in at least knowing who I am in Christ. I know that I am the King's daughter and that He has a purpose for me. But it's been for many years that I've been trying to figure out what that purpose is. And when I explain to you about my school years, you'll understand a little more by what I mean by that. But I've come to this place of realizing, I guess would be the word, of accepting and blossoming where I'm planted. And if that's as a homemaker and as a vlogger and as a blogger, then that's what I'm going to do. Um, but these formative years prior really had an impact on me, because when I turned 50, I started looking back at my life and wondering what was I put here for? If I couldn't go to college, if I couldn't, do this, if I couldn't do that, and I'll get to all those do this and do that in a minute, or in the next video, I should probably say. Then I wondered what my purpose was until I discovered this avenue and discovered that maybe writing was something that I could do to contribute, because most of us want to be able to leave behind a legacy. or something that people will remember us for. Obviously, hundreds of years from now, if the Lord does not return by then, um, my name will be forgotten, and all of us will, and our legacy will be forgotten eventually down the road. But most of us have that ability to leave behind a little something of ourselves, things that we remember. Like there's a lot of things that I treasure and I cherish, even though my father too did not um, have the greatest of educations, and yet he made it in business, and he left behind a lot of little sayings that helped me to, realize the importance of life and how fragile it was, and excuse me, and to keep pushing forward, and to have integrity, and to be the best that I can be as a human being, things that he used to tell me all the time. And so that's his legacy to me, is teaching me how to be the best me that I can be, and and serve others and love the Lord. And so every human being, at least most of us, want to leave behind something for others to remember us by, whether that's a niece, a nephew, a grandchild, hopefully, maybe a daughter, a son, just the people that have known us all our lives. When we pass, we want to make sure that we leave behind something that is meaningful and that they treasure, and know and feel that you had importance and you had significance. I struggled with significance a lot in my later years leading up to now, from like the time, like I said, from the time that I was 50, wondering what my significance and my purpose is, aside from knowing who I am in Christ. I want to leave something behind. We all do. So school really was, as I started on the first time I tried to videotape this, because this is really difficult for me to talk about. There's a lot of my school years that I don't remember, and I think it's because I was in and out of school a lot, and from being sick. And back in the day when I was much younger, I would catch a sniffle and I was down. And when I got sick, I really got sick. Now it's like I hardly ever get really sick with like a cold or the flu or whatever. But when I do get it, I'm down for the count, and I really make a big show of it. My body just really tells me it's time to lay down. But yeah, so I would be often sick. I would catch everything that passed by when I was in school. And it's like that for all of us even today, because viruses pass in the air. So I there's a lot of missing pieces there. But I do remember the difficulty that my mother had, because a lot of this was pre ADA and pre what do they call it, a reasonable accommodation, which is everywhere today, and it's made, I think and I hope, a huge difference in many disabled children's lives who are going through the school systems and not being put into special schools, um, just because they're in a wheelchair or walk with a walker, or whatever, whatever means that they use, or have conditions that are not necessarily visible on the outside but make it difficult for them to be out and about, but they're not, because the ADA and reasonable accommodations has been put in so that they are integrated, into a regular school like every other child, as they should. So my mother was a pioneer in her thinking in that sense, because she was advised at one time to perhaps put me in a special school. They thought that it would be better for me to be with other kids like me. Well, that might have been true to some degree. I think it was a really good idea, even as difficult as it was, being the only kid in a wheelchair. In the entire school and through the whole school system, from like kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. I was the only one in the system, through the school system at the time. And it did come with a lot of challenges, because I did have a lot of special needs at the time. One of them I'll just give as an example was, because I had a Foley, or a bag. I had a bag for my um, urinary tract. Um, Trying to say this as delicately as I possibly can, but no way to get around it really. Um, I had to drink a lot to keep my bladder and my kidneys functioning well. And so this required getting special permission to have one of those like hospital jugs that they give you at the hospital full of water, and it had to be refilled, and I drink and drink and drink all day long. And that caused a lot of conflict with the other students because I was allowed to be dismissed to go to the little girl's room to empty the bag that I had more frequently than they were allowed to. So the navigation of that was difficult for the teachers as well as it was for the students because they couldn't understand why I had special privilege, I guess. And the teachers, although they were sympathetic, um, had to say no to the other kids. And that created a lot of, well, why? And so that was hard for them. Today, I don't think it would be that way today. I think it would just be, that's just normal. That student needs that, and that's just the way it is. But back then, that's not how it was. Uh, Middle school years were a little bit better. Oh, yes, getting back to that one example. For example, because I had to have that water all the time, the bag would, of course, fill. I'd ask to go to the little girl's room. Teacher would let me go. The other kids would moan and groan, make a fuss. Talk about making me feel really good. But I'd go and I'd do it and then come back to the classroom, or they would come with me, obviously. Um, and But there were times when I think the teachers thought that I was faking it and just trying to get out of class, and I wasn't. And so I would go home sometimes with a burst bag and be wet right up to here. And that would not make my mother very happy because now this meant having to change that, all over again. And the skin on your stomach is very sensitive. So she had to be really mindful of making sure to keep that area of my stomach protected from any kind of breakdowns, because back then I was also prone to breakdowns a lot, skin breakdowns. She went to go and see the principal of that grammar school that I went to and tried to talk to him and reason with him and, try to get some understanding, I think, of where the teachers were, where their mindsets were, what they were thinking, and to make him understand that I wasn't, just trying to get out of class. And and she came out of the building of the school. I was in the van waiting for her, and she came out of the school and bawling. And I didn't know for years until after what had happened, even though I was like, "Mommy, why are you crying?" And but years later, I would find out it was because he was very sharp with her. He was very rude, and he had no compassion whatsoever for the situation, and probably threw some things in her face that she didn't deserve to hear. But be that as it may, next phase. I went into, for us, middle school was 6th, 7th, and 8th. And so when I got into middle school, it was a little bit better. But now, all of us as students are all going through that awkward stage, just beginning to try to figure ourselves out, trying to figure out who we are and how we fit, and what clique we fit into. And schools are cliquey, you get your little group. And I didn't really have a particular group that I really remember. I don't recall it like that. I do recall not feeling like I fit really anywhere. And that carried on even into high school. But I did have a group of friends, yes. And I would later learn that some of these friends were actually not really friends. They were caught up with the novelty of being with the girl in the wheelchair that they got to push. And in middle school, that got pointed out to me. But of course, my heart couldn't take that. I didn't want to believe that anybody would just be using me for the novelty of pushing a wheelchair, but there were some that did do that. And again, the whole bathroom thing was another issue. It was a constant sore in the side with a lot of them. But we were very blessed because the principal of the school was um, handicapped himself as a result of polio, I believe it was he had as a young child himself. He survived it because I think he contracted it because he didn't get the vaccine, or it was prior to the polio vaccine having come in, but he survived it. And so he knew what it was like to be a kid in a hospital or constantly in and out of a hospital and not quite fitting in because he had a limp and he didn't quite fit in with anybody until much later in life, and which is the same here with me. So now we go into high school, and here we go again, and we have the principal, and the vice principal was a little bit better, but the principal himself, reasonable accommodation just wasn't a thing until I think it was in my I want to say my junior year. I joined, or maybe at the end of my sophomore year, I had joined an organization called the Maine Association of Handicapped Persons. And this association had a few guys on board and ladies on board that were lawyers that fought for disability rights. But most of it comprised of people that were like me with a variety of conditions. Some were wheelchair bound because of other things, not just necessarily spina bifida. Others had cerebral palsy. Some walked with walkers, some with canes, some with crutches, and some had, I'm trying to think of the correct verbiage. Hold on. Mental disabilities, and I guess would be the term to use. They were, slow to learn, and we had a few people that had Down syndrome, and so they struggled. They had their challenges with that as well in terms of learning. And again, this whole reasonable accommodation thing was a really big deal because now at this point, now that here we are, we're in the 80s now, we're early 80s, and people are fighting for this to get their kids, more kids, integrated into the schools to be just like everyone else. And that's all any of us as disabled people is. We want to be treated with respect and treated age appropriately, obviously, and to realize that for some of us, we've matured more quickly than others, but that's because of circumstances in our lives. But at the same time, we're still just kids. And so it's important for kids like myself to be as integrated as is possible and to not be made to feel, well, like you can't do that. Well, let me try first and then I'll tell you if I can or not. That's another video. So yeah, it was very, very challenging. Now, the school had an upstairs and a downstairs, of course. And as I said, I'm in this association. I meet these two people that are both lawyers who are trying to fight for the rights of the disabled to be integrated, to get the reasonable accommodations put in. And my high school did not have an elevator. And one woman was a Catholic nun, but she was also a lawyer who fought for disability rights. The other guy was working with somebody else, I think. And the decision was made to sue the school. And that was a process in itself. And now bear in mind that while this is really, really hard. It's harder than I thought it was going to be. While I agreed with everything in essence, I agreed with the fact that, yeah, this was not right. This was a discrimination in some form. that my school was, yeah, they were in non-compliance. They were found in non-compliance to the ADA rules. So they got sued. Now, it wasn't about money. It wasn't about what I was going to get. There was no compensation for me at all. But it was to make the point that this needed to happen. You needed to get this place up to regulation as it stood. And they brought in, we had a lot of discussions with school boards and with teachers, um, and let me just say that my last 2 years of high school were very unpleasant, because I had a lot of people coming up to me and asking me questions like, how much you gonna get? Suing the school, huh? You know, just really being, as the kids would say today, snarky. Yeah, just really rude. And then it went from that to, oh, the teacher saying, don't touch Donna, and don't help her, just don't touch her. Um, yeah, that was really, really hurtful. Not to do anything for me, not to help me, not to push my chair, to not touch me. I don't know what it was that they were thinking. I think they thought that if they allowed the other students to touch me in any way, shape, or form, or to like push me to the next class or whatever, because a lot of the kids did that. A lot of kids would help me along because pushing this chair like this all day in an 8-hour day was pretty exhausting. Plus trying to carry a backpack. So, yeah, sometimes it was very kind of a student to come along and say, hey, what class are you going to? Oh, I'm going to such and such a class. Here, let me push you the rest of the way, because there was time, because you don't want to make that person late either for their next class if they weren't going in the same direction. But it was very kind of them. But all of that just stopped dead. And it got so bad that I remember one day in my junior year, I was with my Aunt Georgette on my dad's side of the family and my mother, and I think there was somebody else, but I don't remember who it was. But I remember them being there. And we were getting out of the van, and we were at McDonald's. And I looked at my mother and I said, I don't want to go to school anymore. I want to quit. I'll just get my GED. And it took a lot of convincing, but they finally convinced me to stick it out and to see it through, and I did. And I remember in high school, on the day of graduation, there was half of me that felt like I earned this day just as much as anybody else did, but feeling like I didn't, because what did I learn? And I look back at that now, and it's like, I know more today about the subjects that I was supposed to be learning, than I did then. And I guess it's that way for everybody, but I know more now. I mean, more self-taught, And so, yeah, I remember feeling kind of half and half. And I also was very conflicted about, which I don't think is something that my mom knew. I felt very conflicted about this lawsuit because, which could, you know, be understandable given that people were thinking that I was doing this for money. But I remember thinking in my head as we're sitting there with the the lawyer that's representing me, and these mediators that came from Boston to talk with the superintendent, with the principal and the vice principal, all these, in my mind, as a kid at what, 17, 18, big wigs. They're bigger than me. They're my authorities. And I'm thinking, why? I mean, I'm nobody special. Why should they have to redo everything just for me? you know? And if I had been alone with them, I have to honestly say, if I had been alone with them and Kathy wasn't there, my lawyer, and my mother, and they asked me, do you want to go through with this? And do you think that you deserve this? I would have said, probably no. But I was going along with what the adults in my life wanted. And it was the right thing, because if we hadn't have done it, then there would have been no progress. And there's still a lot of progress that needs to happen where it concerns disabled people. But that will be, as I said, another video. But it was a very, very rough time for me. And as I said, when I graduated, there was that one half of me that was like, I deserved every bit of this because I worked hard for it, which I did work hard for it, because I had to always constantly make up work and assignments, because I was always out all the time from being sick from something that passed in the wind, or maybe I had just come home from the hospital, so they provided tutors, which they did it like gritting their teeth and smiling nice, resentful, I think, in a way, but they did it. And so I had a lot of, and like I said, I felt like I didn't learn anything. And I feel like I've learned more now than I did then, like about subjects like history. Math was always a huge struggle for me. Always has been, always will be. Don't ask me anything about trigonometry or geometry or, no, not my forte. But reading, in 6th grade, I was tested, and I had a 12th grade reading level because I love to read and still do. So, yeah, it was very, very hard on me. And so next week, I will try to, if you have any, first, before I forget, please like, comment, and ask questions if you want. There may be some things in what I've said thus far that maybe I missed. If there's a question you have, I'm more than happy to answer it. And just leave a comment down below. And don't forget to share the video because it helps the channel. And I really appreciate all of you. And so next week I will try to address how that part of my life affected my future going forward. That I kind of started to talk about at the beginning of this. I hope that you found this interesting. I hope that, maybe somebody will share a story of maybe something that they went through before the ADA and reasonable accommodation was put in, and what their experiences were in public places, and or what your experience is now since the ADA has been put in and reasonable accommodation, and how that has changed your life for hopefully the better. I do know that, I'm going to end with this one last thing. I do know that there was another student that did come in after me, who was able to use the elevator, the new elevator at the school that I went to, the high school that I went to. And so that was good. So it wasn't for nothing that I went through what I did. But I won the case, obviously. Forgot to put that in there, didn't I? I did win that case, and they did put the elevator in. It was 6 months after I graduated, and of course my first response was, sure, now you put the elevator in. But it did benefit somebody else, so it's a good thing. And God, designed it that way, and maybe there's something in there that I still need to learn, from that experience. And that's okay, because that's what life is all about. Life is a journey, but you can find joy in it along the way, no matter how hard it is. One of the little things that I try to do, and I'm not always very successful, trust me, I'm not, but I try to look for things to be grateful for. So each morning when I get up, I try to look around and say, okay, I'm really grateful for ... and whatever it is, and at least give myself at least one thing. No matter how negative I'm feeling, I'll try to at least think of something, because all in all, I think I'm a pretty happy person. Not to say that I don't have my ups and downs, but I like to laugh, and I like to reminisce about things, and just enjoy other people. I like to talk. That's probably why this vlogging thing is such a good thing for me, because I do like to talk and share ideas with others and share experiences with others, and just enjoy people. I like to know what makes people tick. So, anyway, you have a good night, and God bless you. And I will hopefully, God willing, see you again next week. God bless. Bye now. Mwah.